9:09. Marcia, you're going to call the roll, please.
Paul Alexander.
Present.
Marty Benjamin. Somebody signed A.
I signed that.
Oh,
AB, that's what it is.
Michael Benjamin.
He's here.
Is he really? Lori Bell. She's no longer.
She's going to be here maybe, but she did resign as of June 30th.
Jim's from
Here.
those last year's absent. And now we're doing it. Bob Marks. Yes. Matt Mallory is absent. Antonio Paisano. Is he going to be absent the whole time?
I think so.
Marcia Radley, present. Karen Willis. She's here because she's signed in.
She's here.
Karen.
Chit chatter.
Oh, here.
Thank you. Yeah.
Present. Quorum.
Just see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
And then that's quorum. Okay, pledge of allegiance. Bob Alexander, you want to use the pledge of allegiance, please? Mr. President, good afternoon. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with peace and justice for all. Thank you. All right. Our first student body president report. Molly, it's all yours.
Hi everyone. I'm so excited to see all of you here today. So I'm just here to give you a quick student report. So I broke this up into different categories. So first I'm gonna start off with the girls' restrooms. Smaller gaps between our doors, not all doors. I've noticed that it's only towards, I believe, our older doors, like the wooden ones. The newer ones don't have bigger gaps. It's just for privacy reasons. And I understand that we keep putting a lot of work into our bathrooms, so I would also like to work on possibly creating a solution so that kids could respect the work that we put into our bathrooms rather than us putting more money into them and then them continuing to not appreciate it. Also, I was wondering if we could have a consistent feminine products restock. I noticed that throughout the year, it's not really always full. You know, some women can't make it to the nurse's office as fast as they want to. So I was just wondering if we could have a consistent restock in that. For the boys' restrooms, a lot of males requested if we could hire the stalls. I noticed, well, many males are taller than many females, so when they tend to use the stalls, they're looking over the stalls practically, and I feel as if that is an invasion of privacy as well. And then just overall refurbish our soap dispensers and our air dryers, but again, that comes with creating a solution for students to respect the work that we put into fixing them. For the parking lot, I had a lot of students request, or a lot of student concerns on regards to just our Haynes parking lot, maybe creating a designated entrance and exit area and adding direction leading arrows and maybe having more staff guiding the vehicles out so that it's not getting so blocked. About half an hour before school starts, it tends to get very crowded, so possibly creating a more organized drop-off and pick-up location for our more popular parking lot. Additional suggestions I have received were just catch-up days, maybe Fridays before each progress report. It would be mentally beneficial to both teachers and students. Although we are back on campus, I feel as if that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't need a day throughout the school year for both teachers and students to just rejuvenate. And then better management of our cafeteria lines. Maybe this is more towards our cafeteria cards, possibly just creating a gate or a fence just for them to follow rather than them creating their own clusters of students trying to get a mic. And then to reserve student parking. I know this is a really big one, but I know our Haynes parking lot is used a lot for our students, more of our seniors and our juniors up the drive. So I did come up with a little plan for students to reserve their parking spots at the beginning of the year, and they're able to use it throughout the entire year. I do have a printout of all the notes that I just did. I understand that it's a lot that I just said. So I can go ahead and pass it down that way if you guys want to take a longer look at it. But other than that, that is all I have for you today.
That's a lot for a brand new student.
When school is.
And there's nobody here. Thank you. Yeah, okay. All right, any open communication?
Nothing negative? No open.
None, okay. UTLA, Mr. DeFonso.
Good morning, all. Richard DeFronzo reporting here for UTLA. Not too much really going on over the summertime. It's always good to see you all here. I think, as usual, number one concern here is our healthcare and our setup with Charter Life. I know there's been some movement and discussion going on there. I just hope it's moving in a positive direction. We really do appreciate your attention to this matter. Going back to the beginning of this year, I started talking about this issue in January, and it really gathered some momentum. I think they're back there in March. Let's hang in there and get this figured out. I've gotten some emails from some people where they've had procedures and they've had to pay up front, and the paperwork back and forth with doctors in this Charter Life deal is unbelievable. But you've heard me talk about it before. In relation, I guess, to health as well, I know COVID is still an enormous issue here. Fortunately, we weren't mandated to wear masks, I guess, today. But I'm a little interested in knowing what the COVID testing policy is going to be moving forward for this next year. We had been testing at least once a week, and it tapered off a little bit near there at the end of the year. I don't know where we're going to be at moving forward. Also, in relation to health, I've had a few people over the summer. I know this is a little bit outside of the purview of, I guess, UTLA as a whole at this point, but our HR committee has talked about shared sick time, and some people have become interested in that idea of being able to share illness time. Look, it gets very complicated when you jump into those weeds. I know our HR committee, this has been on their agenda all last year, and they're working on it. But I think we'll see something coming forward in relation to that.
Just a little louder.
Oh, hello.
Thank you.
Yes.
While you're on that, is there anything that can be done to expedite it? Because I know there are staff members who really need to avail themselves of that now. Like when you're in that situation, it's urgent. So is there anything that can be done to move that along for HR or special meeting, anything?
I think the best thing to do is probably have an emergency human resource committee meeting, get them to move something up to the board, and in a special meeting, an emergency meeting, you all could pass something. Look, as long as there's buy-in from the staff, you're going to have UTLA signing off on this. I do know that some other charter schools, Palisades, I don't know if El Camino's adopted it yet, but they're working through it as well. One member just recently, in the last few days, who was interested in this, had experiences with LAUSD having this policy. So actually last night, I culled through the LAUSD, their collective bargaining agreement, and I couldn't find anything.
2 years ago, I got it here at Birmingham for Barbara Stowski, who needed it, and almost every single member of the staff donated a day or more.
Right.
That was 22 years ago.
Right. So I'll share my thought, and it's changed.
I understand.
Yeah. I had an interesting thought. This I should present at that committee is giving people the opportunity to donate one day at the beginning of the year to a pool. Look, what happens if two people get sick with the same illness at the same time? And one person's is more favored than others, and people get to choose who. Like, how is that process going to work and make it equitable, fair to
I get that it's really thorny, but could you move that along to get, like someone to get a human relations special meeting on it so that it brings up to the board?
Yeah.
as soon as possible?
yeah.
Maybe even if something comes through HR, if you can have a special meeting. Because I know for several, it is urgent.
I'll work with Mr. Fischler
Okay.
and Mr. Franza.
Yeah.
And Amanda, and we'll get something going next week.
I really appreciate it.
Just a comment that I've worked at some LAUSD schools where this issue came up.
Yeah.
It's not a problem.
Okay.
I never bothered to check the contract. I just assume unless it's been approved by HR, we just went ahead.
Do you know?
Donated.
Okay. Maybe your experience would be helpful and insightful. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I will reach out to Mr. Fischler this way. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. We do have two new positions that need to be designated on the stipend table, and that's the activities director and the independent study director. One request I'm just going to throw out there. This is really towards you, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Ari Bennett. Opening the Safe Schools modules that people need to go through, maybe a little before school starts. I know there's some time reserved on the schedule there, but any extra time would be nice. I think it's about 3 hours right now.
I believe it's already been open.
Has it been? Thank you very much. Thank you.
The only reason why I know that is because we had one employee that was really ambitious over the summer and finished it all. And I reached out to HR and asked them, is that okay? Will that cover it for the year? And she confirmed that it did.
Okay, very good. How long ago was that?
A week ago.
Okay. I have mentioned before, and I'm going to mention it again. Constant reminder: this will be for teachers and counselors, the 4th year of a new modified schedule and preparation and planning. We have an academy period coming in, which is 60 minutes. I've been working on pacing plans for government and economics over the summer. It's going to impact the flow of those courses for sure, with some of that time missing there. The other thing I'd like to just throw out there for us all to consider is, in relation to the academy, how are we going to know it's successful, and what are the data points to track that? And I would like to thank the cafeteria. I know Evelyn's not here, but a big movement has been made towards allowing staff to order online ahead of time for lunch and breakfast. So that's a very good thing. We thank you, and you all have a very nice week.
Thank you. All right. See you report, Trish.
Good morning. My name's Tris Carpenter. I am the consultant / business representative for CEU. I only am here to report that hopefully, with some luck, we will have an election scheduled for CEU, and next meeting you will actually have elected leadership here to give you this report. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, informational items. There's been some requests to change 2 meeting dates that fall on weekends where it's a longer weekend. Our current calendar has a November 2nd, a November 12th Saturday, and a May 27th Saturday meeting. Question really is, do we want to switch dates, or do we want to keep it like we have, alternating between Saturdays and Tuesdays? It would seem to be changing the schedule is not in our best interest. So I would suggest that we do the following, that we move November 12th to November 19th, and that we move May 27th to May 20th, and ascertain whether or not we'll have a quorum on those 2 Saturdays, as opposed to switching a Saturday to a Tuesday and messing up our current schedule. Then November 12th, I think, is Veterans Day weekend or something. The following week is the beginning of Thanksgiving week, but if we can ascertain if we need a quorum beforehand, we'll go from there. Otherwise, postponing them and changing them does not fall into what we normally do. All right? Hearing, moving November 12th to November 19th on a Saturday, and May 27th, moving it to May 20th on a Saturday. Okay? Thank you. Mr. Marks.
Good morning. I'm going to report on our election for 22-23 school year for board members in the different groups. Let me start with classified. We do have 1 candidate, and I spoke with Angie Diaz. She's going to set up an election when everyone is back. And it looks like we're looking at August 19th. It's probably be like the 17th, 18th, and 19th. With the 19th being the deadline to return the ballot. And this is for an affirmation. And it'll come back to us if the candidate is affirmed. And at our next meeting, which is on the 30th of August, we then can confirm or not confirm, whatever the case may be, that individual. That's for classified. It's actually identified in our charter as non-certificated. So, we can sort of use interchangeably. Okay, our other board member position is parent. And we do have 2 candidates that have submitted both their resume and their letter of intent within the qualifying time. It ended this past Wednesday, the deadline to submit. So we do have 2 candidates to consider. So our parent center director, Ms. Ponce, is going to hold a meeting on the 15th of August, and the recommendation will be made. They'll interview the 2 candidates, and they'll make a recommendation in the parent center. And we would then move to confirm that once again on our August 30th meeting.
Okay.
Let me add that this is the first time in several years that we've actually had sort of a contested parents election. Usually, usually we're out hunting and finding someone and making them to take the position. So it's nice to have a contested. Shows interest.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. On committee reports, the only committee report is facilities and operations. Matt?
Richard DeFranco again, reporting for facilities and operations. I'll start here with the cafeteria. Student breakfast and food's going to be served in the morning between 7:30 and 8:24. Wednesdays be a little bit modified with the later start. The cafeteria refresh has been placed on hold right now. That's for the staff just next door. Sign up for meal applications has been ongoing. The last numbers I was presented, 1,921 students are uploaded in Aries. Of that, 1,393 qualify for free and reduced lunch. I mean, and the reality is here at Birmingham, we serve free meals to all the students, but we do need those designations. They're very important for reporting. The moving forward in relation to the numbers, those are pretty high at this point. IT, informational technology, there's been limited tickets this last month. For the most part, the focus has been on new employees, getting them set up, and employees who've left, closing out those accounts. Projects in relation to technology, they've finished the freshman orientation that just ended. They've tested and set up all rooms, the projectors and the hubs and the printers. Right now, they're rolling over the profile server into a OneDrive. So everyone, for the most part, I think there are one or two exceptions. Their backups will go directly to the OneDrive. The 2026 Chromebooks have been completed and set up. For students picking those Chromebooks up, there are some makeup days upcoming. The extra old computers, the plan is to migrate some of those to classrooms. So this last year, seniors had to turn in their Chromebooks. They were not given the option to buy. We do have two computer labs or classrooms that use computers heavily. H63 and E33, they're set up. Our staff has been trained, and that's moving forward right now. We're ready for the school year. Campus safety, they're here for orientation and the orientations. Right now, working with the drop-off with out here in the Victory parking lot, working with High Tech High and as well as Magnolia. Working on locker room procedures to help mitigate vandalism. And campus safety employees have been designated at all the gates for students to present their questionnaire upon entering the campus. Maintenance and operations here in the MPR, these tables that we used to fold out, the replacement parts have been ordered and they have come in. Those tables will be worked on starting next week. Our swimming pool annual maintenance has been completed. All of the air conditionings have new filters. There are new banners up, fresh banners in the hallways. The team worked very hard facilitating the movement of employees and teachers to new workspaces, and high dusting and pressure washing walkways has been completed. I did mention last time we met that I was going to show you all a map just to give us a sense of the facilities. Give me one second.
Where's the arrow that says where we going?
Okay, this is learning experience. On our way in, Mr. Bennett and I were walking in together, Mr. Michael Bennett, and I showed him. I realized that I had another map. I used the big printer to print this out. In the back here from 2018, when I taught AP US history, a map to Road to the Civil War. So a map on a map. I needed to make the paper hard, but you all should look at your map and figure out where we are first, right? The MPR. I just circled it for us all. Right? It's kind of centrally located, right? Where our major projects are going on are out in the 400s. And if you look at their gaps between buildings, right? Those gaps are going to be filled in with other bungalows, right? That's the plan. Now, the issue we have here is you've got two schools. You have Magnolia and you have High Tech High. The other thing are fences and trees and trenching to get communication lines out to this 400 area out on the periphery here. Our transformer box is out here in the Victory parking lot behind me. I've been out there. I've noticed that they're looking at where trenching lines are going to go in. So we have the 400s. That's the big project, the biggest of them all. The other area that we have where there are going to be locker rooms and bathrooms placed are near the soccer fields down here. Now, on the maps that I gave you, something that isn't highlighted is that out in the Haynes parking lot, there are other offices. That's where Human Resources has been located. Oh, that's terrible. And Independent Study are out there in the Haynes parking lot. The other major area of concern, how many years? This has been 5 years now, our stadium. And in our stadium, the visitor side, where I circled near the bathrooms, those 900 seats in wood replacement, that's what's in question. So the areas that I've circled on this map here are really the big areas for projects, just so you have a sense. So from where we're sitting right now, if we were to walk out to the 400s, I'd say 2 minutes. With children, 3 or 4, with younger people on campus and it being full, maybe add another minute, just with congestion and whatnot. To walk all the way across the campus, 6-7 minutes. If you're walking and there's no one in your way. To do the whole loop around the campus takes a good 12, 15 minutes. We've got a big area here. But I did want to highlight where these things are, because I see it in my mind's eye and I point in directions and I'm pointing always in the right direction, but we don't always know exactly what I'm necessarily talking about. Yes, ma'am.
Because I know in the moorings, parking.
Yeah.
We're always parking over there by the 400.
Yeah.
And it's like a fight to get a parking spot. So
Oh.
So what's gonna happen to all those teachers and staff that are all parking over there for
Good.
at the E and D hall? Now, how? if
Great
we're having
question.
having parking issues with students in Haynes, now we're loading all the 400 teachers?
Yes.
How to
No.
get that?
Very good. So the question at hand is, if behind the 400s, there are areas to park, I just marked that in green. And then between the buildings, there are also parking spaces. It's about 30. where are they all gonna go? When those buildings do get dropped in, back here, adjacent to the soccer field, there is an access road, and that access road is wide enough to park cars. Last time I was out there with Lionel, and but a few others, we counted out the possibility of 29 spaces there. They have poured concrete for a sidewalk. Is that a longer walk to your classroom in the F building or the E building from your preferred parking? Yeah. It is.
Are they gonna be together, are they gonna be reserved so that when you come in for a place, or are they gonna be like character parking?
Oh, no, those will be reserved for staff
When you
members.
get in, get clock in, not have to drive around.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, and so for you, and at least for me, I come in that Algea gate there, rather than you going right, you would go left. And get some extra steps. And then our big parking issues are, well, we have our Victory parking lot, which we all park in out here, and that's in the mornings and in the afternoons. It's very difficult, and having all the school start at 8:30 a.m. It's a lot of students. And then our other entrance that people use to get to the circle, driving down Main Street, it's pretty confined, and not everyone abides by the traffic laws, and you make U-turns and do all sorts of fucking stuff in there. It's gonna be a big issue. What the answers are, I don't know if we will ever have the answer, but a lot of on-the-spot decision-making is probably gonna be at hand in the next month or so when people arrive.
Mr. Bennett?
When Tommy Elmore's gonna, when I introduce him up in a little bit, can speak maybe for a couple minutes about the preparation, some of the work that's been done to try to implement a plan that'll work more efficiently at the beginning of the school year.
It may be a moot point, but because Birmingham is a charter school and Magnolia is a charter school.
And I think it's a joke.
LAUSD school, with Prop 39, we need our space, and there's a process to create that space without having to bring in new bungalows. So it's because we're a charter and they're a charter, we can't invoke that. We have to spend all this money for new bungalows to create space for our students.
So are you asking why we can't take their place?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a process. Just don't know
And so
if it's
it's actually not under Prop 39. Prop 39 is specifically district and charter relationship. Because we're all charter, we're just on a shared facilities agreement. Because of COVID, the district grandfathered everybody in for 2 more years. And so I think we could make a case that we need that area. I mean, not only the classrooms, but also the parking. And I think that's maybe something that we would consider in our future, but for at least the next 2 years, that is not an option. But we're always looking at every possible option to be able to do what we need for our students and families.
Aren't we capped on enrollment as well?
We're capped on enrollment, which is 3,200, but it's not really about the enrollment per se. In fact, LAUSD is more interested in keeping our enrollment the same than they're interested in the facility use agreement changing. And so what I mean by that is they don't mind if we have more classrooms as long as we don't increase our cap. Their worry is we're going to take more kids from them. And so if our cap remains the same, they're going to be more flexible with us in what they allow us to expand in terms of space. So that's just something to be aware of.
So that space that you're talking about, Mr. White, I circled and blue there. Much of that, Birmingham was part of LAUSD. That was the magnet school.
That was a space that wasn't being used at Prop 39 permit.
Yeah, and then we know that Daniel Pearl's moved into a nice facility and whatnot. But yeah, so I mean, the hope I think with those bungalows has always been to reduce class size, right? I mean, that's a great goal for all of us to have here. Me as a teacher, smaller class size, the better it is. Yeah. All right, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Good man.
I'll bring it back. I'll save it. All right.
Ms. Bennett.
Is it me?
No, it's not me.
That's exciting. Okay, so it is exciting. The first thing I have in here is I want to introduce 3 new leadership team members. I'm very excited. Sitting next to me is Christine Torres, our new Chief Business Officer. Christine, if you could just maybe give a couple minutes about your experience and introduce yourself to the crowd.
Hi, everyone. Christine.
Give you the mic.
Hi everyone, I'm Christine Torres. I just completed week 2 here at Birmingham. I'm originally, or before this, from Las Virgenes Unified, where I was there for 7 years. And I completed my CBO certification through FICMAP. And I guess I would just say that I'm really excited to be here and part of the Birmingham community.
Thank you. So, yeah, we're very excited to have her. Obviously, it's a different lens. Will has contributed a lot, and really our school wouldn't be where it is without him. But it's it's a new era now, and I know Christine has so much to offer, and it's just going to help us be that much stronger. So, welcome to the team. Next up, I have Mr. Tadeo Polanco. We have Tadeo come on up and introduce himself. Oh, there's a mic over there. Yeah. That's right.
Good morning, everyone. I typically have to break the mics down because, as you can tell, I'm height challenged, but this is a little bit too low. Morning, everyone. Very, very happy to be here. Just a little bit about myself. I have been a principal for the last 10 years up until June. Was a principal in LAUSD and part of 3 different schools. One of the schools which I helped open and lead a team to submit that proposal for the district and get it approved. Very happy to have had that opportunity to work with a great group of people. Very grateful that I also have the opportunity to come over and work with our population here at Birmingham. Prior to being a principal for the last 10 years, I was also an assistant principal for 6 years, a teacher and a coordinator for 7 years prior to that. So I've been with the district for quite a bit of time. I'm very confident that the experiences that I've had are going to allow me to better serve our students and our staff here at Birmingham. Have had the pleasure to meet the majority of the team that I'm going to be working with, and I've shared with them that my number 1 priority is to serve them and so that we can better serve our students. And that's the message that I want to convey to our students and to our staff is I'm here to serve. I do have a wealth of experiences in different areas, and I'm very, very confident that that's going to help us move the school forward. And I want to convey the same message to the board. I am here to serve. If there's anything that I can do individually or with the teams that I'm going to be working with, I want to extend that invitation. For as far as me personally, I was born, you might have picked up a little bit of my accent already. I was born and raised in El Salvador. During the Civil War. Because of the Civil War, I was forced to migrate to the United States. Went to high school here and had a great group of teachers that pushed me and guided me to make sure that I went to school and I graduated. Because my initial intent was just to come and work and help my family. And I think that experience with teachers and other people at the school has also been the foundation that I've used to do the work that I do and the philosophical approach that I have to the work that I do with our students. I think I only have 2 minutes, so I'm gonna stop there unless there's any questions. All right.
Welcome,
No,
thank you.
you have 30 minutes.
I have 30 minutes. All right. Yeah, so we did. Yeah, all right. So yeah, we're gonna have to come back to you in a couple of minutes then.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thanks, sir.
Next up, we've got Mr. Tommy Elmore.
Good morning. I wish, Mr. Bennett, I wish you would have let me go before Mr. Climaco. I don't know how I'm going to top that. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak, to be part of this amazing campus. My experience, I grew up in the city of Pacoima, lived in a lower socioeconomic environment, let's just say. Went to McClay, went to San Fernando High School. I then, from there, went to CSUN, became initially a biology teacher at Sylmar High School. And then I was asked to be the department chair. I was asked to be an instructional coach. So I've had that experience as well. And then I was asked to be an operations administrator at Cesar Chavez Learning Academies, and that's in the city of San Fernando. That's a co-located site. And so just imagine being at a site with 4 instructional leaders, because there were 4 principals, 4 staffs, 4 sets of students. And so we all had to learn how to coordinate and operate with one another. And so I felt that my experience there allowed me to understand the process of creating systems to collectively move us forward as a collective whole. And so I feel that that went very well. I feel like I left the place better than it was when I initially got there. And so I hope that I can bring that experience here. I don't think that I know it all. I'm willing to learn. I believe in establishing relationships, developing rapport. I believe in communication. In my experience here, these few short weeks, I've learned that perhaps communication is one area where we can improve. I feel that instinctively we as human beings, sometimes when we don't know, we assume. And sometimes those could be negative assumptions. And so hopefully we can establish systems that can increase that communication to better it, to better, for the betterment of everybody, let's just say. With regard to the traffic, we are in the process of trying to figure out a system that is going to work. I haven't seen it. I've talked to Mr. Bennett several times about how traffic flows and the dangers that are involved. But one thing I failed to say is that I'm very liability driven. And I learned that from firsthand experience when I was sued or attempted. So a student attempted to sue both the district, myself, and for something that was completely fraudulent. But nonetheless, I had the experience of being in court as a defendant. And the district was being sued. I was being sued personally. I couldn't believe it. They sent me letters. We want your homeowner's information. And I sat as a defendant. Now, of course, we won the case. It was a landslide. The district countersued and won that case as well. But nonetheless, that experience itself really reinforced the importance of ensuring that we are in compliance and we avoid liability. I will say in the few short weeks that I've been here, and first I want to say I've met a lot of amazing people. And so I'm very happy to have the opportunity to meet them and work with them going forward and with the board as well. But what I will say is not perhaps, there are some areas where I believe that we can improve systematically. And so my hopes are that I can get in here, dive in, roll my sleeves up and get to work on that. With regard to the traffic situation, it's exponentially bigger than we think it is. And so after doing a little bit of digging, I've learned that there was a traffic study done. I want to say either 2016 to 2014, I can't remember the date. But nonetheless, there was a traffic study done because they were having the issue in previous years. And it is a safety issue. It is a congestion issue. A traffic study was done to determine what's the best flow of traffic. And so we couldn't even find this study. It wasn't until this week that we were able to find the study. And so I will say that there are a lot of interesting ideas with regard to the flow of traffic, particularly here. Like one example, they talk about bringing in the traffic to come in this way, sort of loop around and go all the way around the perimeter of the parking lot for the drop off, right? Which makes sense because as I understand now, it's like everyone's doing U-turns and going crazy inside the parking lot. In fact, I've heard that there was some sort of a fight, or I don't know exactly what happened already. So I've already met with Maria Thorpe, and she is the district CPM that supports us here. And so that conversation, it tells me that it's going to be bigger than what we think it is. We do have to involve all parties, including our neighbors, the schools that are here, and both Daniel Pearl, Mulholland, because the changes that we make will impact the other schools. And so we have to come up with a comprehensive plan that's going to benefit all schools. And so the other thing I'm trying to find out is I'm trying to define what we can and can't do as a charter school, because as I understand, we do have certain autonomies. And so defining that is going to be one of my objectives, because what I don't want to do is violate any procedure or create any kind of liability issue that's going to hurt us. I mean, when we walked back there, the stop sign is turned in the opposite direction. It's not even facing the traffic that's supposed to stop there at the stop sign. And so we've had extensive talks, and we will continue to talk about creating a plan that's going to be safe and appropriate, and hopefully it'll relieve congestion for everybody. Let me see. We are considering, Mr. Bennett had a great idea about creating sort of a one-way flow in a big circle around the Haynes drop point. And so if we can do that efficiently, I think it'll help a little bit. We are talking about painting the curvature on Haynes Street red, because it's my understanding that a lot of cars will just park there and just completely disregard the curvature. And so we're talking about what enforcement capacity our school police officer can do, given, is that Birmingham property? Is it city property? Is it district property? Et cetera, et cetera. So I think for me, one of the most important things is to define what we can and can't do first before we just move in and jump in and make changes that could potentially impact other schools, number one, and number two, potentially create a liability issue for ourselves. So that's what I have with regard to the traffic.
How are you going to do this before school starts?
To be quite honest with you, Mr. Bennett, it's not going to happen before school starts.
No, I know.
Yeah, it just simply, it can't. It's a big plan. But in my conversation with Maria Thorpe, the plan is now to bring these stakeholders or these other schools back into the conversation. I'm not sure why the conversation stopped. It doesn't make sense. This is a safety issue. It should be priority. And so the plan is to re-engage them in conversation and hopefully develop a plan that's going to work for everybody. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's been a problem for years. There's 7 schools in M&O, and you have all those different communities. So
School police, yeah.
initially, if you could get the stakeholders together and put out one directive map for all the schools for traffic flow, that may help. Because whatever you have, parents who are rushing to work, trying to drop their kid off,
Right.
they're oblivious to whatever
Right.
rules that we may have.
Right.
But at least if there's an agreed upon policy it gives us some leverage in enforcement when people don't.
I agree totally, and that was one of the first things I did was make them.
That's real tough.
Yes, sir. And again, I agree totally. That was one of the things I did was just print a map to begin with. We need something to work with. And so I do have a complex map now. I have a very large map and a map that we can use to kind of lay out our plan, because talking about it without people understanding specifics, that's going to be difficult if you can't see it. Yes, ma'am.
Marcia Ryan. Don't forget when you're doing the plans that Magnolia and High Tech are there, and they have existing tablets that you need to consider too, make sure everybody's on the same page and collaborate.
Thank you, ma'am. I do appreciate that comment, and I have met with Magnolia and we have met with High Tech. One of the things that we have initially started, we put down on paper an actual supervision schedule, which was never done, and I'm not sure why, but we do have that now, and that's a starting point for those types of conversations. We will try to elicit their support. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have something, or do we have something, along the lines of being proactive in the case of a situation happening on campus? In the case of, when you're talking traffic flow, if an incident happens on campus and all those kids get on their phones, parents start showing up to pick up their kids, and now emergency services can't get in, because all the parents are literally blocked off trying to get their kids in their cars. Do we have a plan or something in place that somehow allow emergency services to still get on campus?
What I'll say is this, in place as of this moment, we do not. But in my assessment of our emergency procedures, we're not ready. We're not ready at all. Just to give you a quick snapshot, I went and inventoried the emergency bin with all the supplies, the consumables, ointments, gels, stuff that we need to consume during an emergency, expired in 2017. So I did inventory it all. I did replenish it all. I just looked at the emergency buckets that are in the classrooms. Those two expired. And so it's bigger than what I initially thought it was going to be. It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of planning, but we will get there and we will have a plan.
You know, you're talking about the curb outside on Victory, it might be an early start to make changes to contact the city council member for this area to start the preparation. In other words, get that curb painted red now, so people start seeing that you can't stop there as a beginning of your plan to change traffic flow.
Right.
Let me make a couple points quickly. The red that we're talking about Haynes,
Correct.
not Victory. But I think your point is still valid. I mean, we need to connect with local politicians to get everybody at the table and be able to help us move the city. If we're gonna make adjustments like that, I don't know what the right thing to do is on Victory. We do have the signs that are up right now allows cars to park there for a limited period of time, and I think that's why we get that on Victory, and it kind of clogs that up before dismissal. On the Haynes side, we get cars that at dismissal park like in the Haynes road, in the Haynes access road, and that our school police officer has let us know that that's a worry, because if an emergency vehicle needed to come in, they're not going to have the wide berth to turn into Haynes if we have one of the lanes that's effectively blocked off. Where emergency vehicles could always get access in is through the Mulholland access road that comes in from Van Owen. And so that's where we would bring somebody in case of an emergency right now. And all we'd have to do is open up the gate that's sort of adjacent to the soccer stadium or soccer field. And so emergency services could come through there. On the Haynes side, and what originally we had wanted to do was when you go into the student parking lot, and there would only be an entrance right now. And NLE, you're talking about how we should have arrows and it should be one direction. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about. So we're talking about it going one way into the student parking lot. You would not be able to exit out of that same entranceway. And then you would go out where the parking lot is behind the softball fields. Okay? That was sort of the original plan we were going to go with. The problem with that, though, is that leads them out to, once you go out the softball field, then you can go out that road, that service road, which is like adjacent to the local district, but there's no stoplight there at Balboa. And so that would back up traffic. The other way you can go is you can go left and then go out the Mulholland access road on Van Owen, but there's no stoplight there. And so school police was concerned about the traffic that would lead to. His idea, I mean, we literally got into his car and we were like doing laps and thinking about different options. His idea was, instead of students coming in through the way they come in now to the Haynes parking lot, to go around and actually enter the student parking lot from the softball field, right? Then you'd exit where we enter right now. You'd exit there, and then you'd route out to the light on the Haynes. The other benefit of doing that is, as traffic starts to build up, you have a longer line space because it's going all the way around. It's going around the student parking lot instead of going right into the student parking lot. So that allows for a longer backup. That's sort of where we are right now. But as Tommy mentioned, no matter what we do, it's going to impact the other schools. And so for us to just on our own implement something without having the buy-in of all the stakeholders in the area, would be, is not the direction we want to go in. We want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So when we act, we're all communicating with one voice to all of the parents and the community members in the area, and we can implement it that way with fidelity. Otherwise, we're going to be fighting each other.
And to answer, you mentioned the curvature, Mr. Bennett. I apologize, Mr. President.
We only have one president, he's in Washington.
Regarding the curvature, painting it red is one thing. We do also have to have the appropriate signage out there, because school police will not enforce unless there is the appropriate signage out there. So we can't just roll out signs and say no parking and have it painted red. We need to have fixed signage there, and it has to be appropriate signage.
No, I think that if Bob Blumenfeld is the council member for this area, I have access to him. But I think if you start with that, getting the signage and the painting of the curb, you're beginning to give a signal to everybody, this is going to change. And the quicker you get that done, the easier it's going to be to get the rest of your plan in place.
Fair enough.
So if you need help to get Bob Blumenfeld on board, call me.
Thank you.
We'll be calling.
Yes, sir.
I have a different number. Karen, Dennis.
Dennis Cohen, social studies, 33 years teaching, 27 here. The only person in the room who's probably had more experience with Birmingham is Mrs. Ryman, who was here as. No, you were here when I was here as a student teacher in 1990.
67, baby.
No, I started late. So anyhow, the point is that, you talk about, what's been going on, why hasn't there been different changes and stuff. There's been lots of major changes which have been implemented very, very, very poorly by previous administration. Okay, just dumping and changing and stuff. And it always defaults back to where it is, because apparently this is the least worst situation. Now you've got high-tech, well, it is. It's like democracy, it's like anything else, right? It's the least worst, the least default, and
Right.
Good luck. Good luck. Getting, how long has it been for the bungalows? 8 years, trying to deal with, Magnolia and the district and everything else. Good luck. I'll, maybe come back in about 20 years and maybe see a little difference. don't know. This school site used to have 4,000 people and it functioned. And this is when Haynes was a thorough street, I believe. And I don't know how that got changed. So, is Haynes even legally blocked off the way it's supposed to be? So, you go to curvature and all this other stuff. So good luck on getting all the parties, because you're gonna need a room larger than this for every invested person in this massive thing that we've got. But it has always defaulted back to where it's at, because
We
the
remain
community
optimistic.
resistance to it.
We remain optimistic.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, please get the act together, because with the addition of Magnolia, is what I've seen is the problem, because the parents will pull off the park at the Magnolia, used to be the west access exit, but we're no longer allowed to use that. The good old days, and they just stop there, but that's right before you. Some of us take a right on whatever street that is in order to get to the Aldea. Now, whoever decided to open Aldea was great, because that did relieve some of the congestion, at least for the employees.
Well, I shared.
This is why we brought Tommy in, because Tommy's a bulldog, and we're not gonna leave it alone until we get some improvement.
And I share the sense of optimism. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
That's right. That was the interview question.
Thank you, guys.
Any other questions? Welcome, Tony.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Bennett, back to you.
All right, cool. So the next up is, that's on the PowerPoint there. So I asked Miss Cindy to put together a little PowerPoint so she could summarize what has been done in summer school. Yeah, it's in the Dropbox. In short, we had 113 students pass advanced PE a full year, 121 passed Algebra 1A and B. You have the summer session marks by courses that you can see for biology. And so 124 kids passed biology A and B, 37 environmental science, and you can see the rest. And I think the big idea here is we all know what summer school is for. It's for credit recovery, especially in the area or in the era of COVID. But the kids took it seriously. Mo showed up. I know she is the summary on the first page of the PowerPoint. About 250 students didn't show up, but that was after we had an enrollment of 1,650. So the fact that we had 1,400 kids that made it through is fantastic. And obviously, our challenges with summer school are always teacher burnout. So finding enough teachers that are willing to do it, and we don't want to burn out our staff. And then secondly, we also want to aspire to do enrichment. But if you don't have enough teachers, then the credit recovery becomes a priority over enrichment. I talked about with Isaac doing AP boot camp over the summer. We wanted to do, ultimately, I'd like to bring in a summer bridge STEM experience for advanced kids that are coming up and have an opportunity to do like a week of science, a week of tech, a week of engineering, and a week of math. These are programs that we would like to bring to our kids, and hopefully as we get more kids to pass class, and this is one of the biggest messages that I want to communicate to our student body is pass class is the first time. Pass class is the first time, then we could use our resources in summer school for enrichment. But when we have a certain degree or a high percentage of fails, we have to give our kids the opportunity for credit recovery. But I'd like to get to the point where we can decrease our fail rate, decrease the amount of credit recovery we have to do over the summer, and then be able to provide some of those enrichment experiences. But I think to NLE, we need to communicate. You got to pass it the first time, because you may not have the credit recovery opportunity, because we don't have as many teachers that they need a break in the summer. Not everybody's willing to teach over the summer. Yeah, everybody wants to make a little extra money, but the last 3 years have been extraordinarily hard. And I want to give them a break to the best of our ability, but we need kids to pass the first time so we don't have to rely on them, because we may not have those classes. Dennis, and then Marshall.
Oh, I'm just.
Okay.
two questions.
Yep.
One, you're gonna address a little bit later about party policy. You know, what was the party policy during summer school? Or was there any? And then also, I guess the other one, is directed at Mr. Alatorre. Are the D fails because, or I guess they're not called fails, NC, the DNC, are they then taken, back into another class? So for instance, if I had a US history fail this past year, and they went to summer school and they failed again, or they got a D again, am I gonna see them back as a 12th grader in my classroom?
So it depends. A lot of them are going to be placed in course-based independent study after school because now we have that program. But some, if it fits in their schedule or because they're working or something's going on with the student, then they may be enrolled in the regular US history section.
Okay, because I've always been concerned over the decades that, you know, my class size swells unnecessarily from people who've been given multiple opportunities to get a, you know, to pass the class. In the past, it was, the emphasis was just on passing. Now with the A through G requirement, you know, ABC grade, but I've seen my classes get pretty sizable. And then tardy, was there any input about tardies? Because anecdotally, I just heard that tardies were rampant. Many students just didn't care, and they're like, oh, 45 minutes, no problem. So, I wasn't here on campus.
Yeah, I mean, Miss Cindy was our lead. That I didn't get that information because we had a policy on tardies and absences. You know, if the kid was, I mean, and maybe it was driven. We'll have to connect with her. Maybe that was driven by if a teacher complained about it. Then that's how she would know about it, and we could address it. But I mean, you couldn't miss more than 3 days, and if you were, you know, if you're tardy over 30 minutes, that's an absence right there. And so they're yeah, I mean, they were doing it by hours really. And so if you missed 9 hours, then you were drop failed. So that was, you know, that's sort of a standard summer school policy to make sure that because it's already abbreviated. If you have kids that aren't coming during summer school, then they're not getting access to the content and they can't pass the class. In regards to your other point about class size with credit recovery, this is I mean, it's interesting. This is an issue we had at a 4x4 school at Poly, where you want to give kids credit recovery opportunities, and generally the most successful credit recovery opportunities are during the regular school day, right? And so during the school year and during the regular school day, not after school, not summer school. However, in our enthusiasm to do that, we don't always take into account class size. And I think, and I talked to Mr. Alatorre about this, we need a policy. So there is a limit on class size for repeat students. Because I don't want, and this goes back to the message to the kids, you need to pass your first time. Maybe you'll have a slot during the school year if class size is low enough, but if it's not, then you're gonna have to wait.
And I don't want to, Mr. Alatorre, and I'll probably get myself in even more trouble now, but try and backtrack or elaborate on this. Social studies classes this last year were extremely reasonable. I mean, the most reasonable I've ever seen. Now, whether that is going to get Gloat or science or somebody else.
Oh, it looks like we can raise class size in social studies, Mr. Alatorre.
But I mean,
I wouldn't share that information.
Yeah, but in the past, I was talking about in the past, it didn't, but still, you know, if you have 3 seniors who are repeating and the class is only 25, it's like, well, it could be 22, you know, or whatever, you could, whatever, do the numbers.
Well,
It's been in the past, not, it wasn't this last year.
Well, and I think we want to know, right? We want to have a policy and we want it to be predictable.
Yeah, exactly, predictable.
Like, I mean, I remember sort of from the principal's office, it's like, okay, we have X number of teachers that can teach X number of sections in social studies, for instance. We have students, so we can predict what class size will be, right? Then we go into and let's just say second semester, and I look at class size, and this isn't here, this is experience at another school, and I look at class size, and class size is like too high, 38, 39. I'm like, what happened? Oh, well, counselors in their enthusiasm to give kids opportunities are putting repeat kids in those classes, and that wasn't accounted for. So, and really all counselors, that's gonna be their default, is give the kids the opportunities. So we need a policy in place that says, this is the limit of class size, and we can't go over that for repeat kids. And that way it's predictable. I mean, it sounds like last year was good anyway, even with repeats. But I think that's what we want that communicated to the counselors and teachers, so it's predictable. If we can be under that, then that's great.
So I just to ease your anxiety, there are only 18 seniors as of last week
Really?
that need U.S. history repeat, and some of them will be going to the independent study course base. So I haven't counted the independent study course base, so that's not a large number of
No,
students.
that's very
Well, the
much
rest
so.
of them will go to you.
Yeah, that's fine.
John?
Easy clap.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. That's part of my question. If a student fails a regular class, they go to summer school and they're not successful there, without putting a scarlet letter on their forehead, putting the pressure, if there's room on the student, that your last opportunity or this opportunity is independent study, then the responsibility is directly on the student and the parents as you speak with them. That if you want to pass, this is what you have to do. If it comes to a point of putting a regular class over the limit and taxing the teacher. You know, it's a balancing act.
Yeah, and I think we've never had that conversation in an open forum about what are the limitations to credit recovery. What should that look like? How many opportunities should you have? What access should you have to the regular instructional program during the school year? I think those are good conversations to have. You know, I'm glad. I mean, Mr. Alatorre is a wizard with a master, and you know, we have intentionally been trying to ensure, whether it's through auxiliaries or hiring, that especially in the past year, class size would be low, and because we have enough stresses, but I think the point is still valid.
So 50% of the student body was enrolled in summer school, right? So has there, just answer, has there been any discussion of converting the schedule to 4 quarters? I mean, that's
So the short answer is no, but what?
Well, the reason I'm asking that is because if it's hard to get staff members to do summer school, if you had a 4-quarter system, then you'd have people all year round available, and each teacher would have one of the quarters off. I'm just asking the question. I'm not saying you should do it.
Well, I have principled in situations like that have been very effective, but whatever we decide to do, you know, needless to say, we have to have the buy-in of everybody. And so, you know, I think there's always that option to look at alternative schedules. You know, but what I will say is we're not, we're in a good place. We keep on getting better. And I think before we make a big change like that, I want to see how much better we can get within the system that we're in. And then we'll go from there.
Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
So I know you were talking a lot about creating this mindset to the students that to pass the class the first time. And just from a student perspective, I remember beginning of my junior year, actually towards the end of my junior year, I found out that we had tutoring. And I feel as if that is not, it's not promoted as much as it should be. So just as we make detention mandatory to do, I was thinking maybe those students that do get close to getting a D or getting an F, maybe making it mandatory for them to go to tutoring 2 times a week.
Are you proposing that board policy to mandate tutoring for students that are struggling?
I mean, I think it would, I mean.
Is that what I hear?
Especially for those students who are on the shyer side who don't tend to ask for help, I think maybe just saying, hey, if you're making it a policy, I guess, yeah, to for those students that are getting close to a tier, are at an F, that making it mandatory for them to maybe, I know it's gonna take more staff, I'm sorry, but maybe just doing like a 9 period saying, hey, you have to come to this class 2 times a week, to, I guess, get that support that they will need, so that we minimize the D's and F's that we're receiving.
There's no recall, from student president, right?
But I think it's, and maybe you and I can connect about this at the beginning of the school year and talk about ways that we can promote it. And, maybe we start with something voluntary but strongly encouraged, see what we can get from that, and then go from there. Okay?
Yeah, I don't think you can make it mandatory, because what recourse you have if the student doesn't show up?
Yeah.
It's gotta be a carrot and a stick.
So, but I mean, there are ways to make it strongly encouraged. And, and it could be, I mean, we've done no-go list here. And so maybe it's you should go. If you don't go, then you're on the no-go list. And so you can't do student activities. So, I mean, there are different ways we can do it, and we can incentivize it too. And that's something we've been trying to do to the best of our abilities, incentivize the right behaviors. But we'll talk more about that. I like that. All right, so that's summer school. And then I think the next thing I have, let's see if I can see, period 1-5. So we have this tardy intervention framework, and I think based on the feedback I got, I mean, obviously it's really a tardy problem, period 1. I think what we want to be careful to do is, and I solicited feedback, didn't get a whole bunch from our staff, talked to Tommy and Tadeo about it, and we were sort of brainstorming ideas. I think what we want to do, though, is a lot of it has to do with kids that are tardy at the beginning of the school year. We have to interact with them and find out why, what's the reason, what's the root cause to the best of our ability, and then have like a separate track. The kids that, if we can determine that there are real serious issues and valid issues that are preventing them from getting there on time, we'll work with them individually, and they'll be on one track. The kids that don't have that, then we're going to begin sort of a progressive intervention plan that will go all the way up to and including a drop fail after 10 targets. I thought about this a lot, and I think we have to look at period 1 and 5 as the same for the purpose of tardies. I need kids to get to school on time. And I need to communicate to our students and our families that that is the expectation. And the top of this, the first paragraph really talks about that. It's not because I'm obsessed about rules or punctuality. It's because learning happens in class. And our period 1 and 5 are just as important as our period 2, 4, and 3, 6, and 4, 8. And so it doesn't make sense that we sort of have this culture where it's just not important for the first period of the day, just because it's the first period of the day. Yes?
Has there ever been a study made, maybe Mr. Alatorre can do this, of grades in period 1 and 5 based on number of targets? And that would be something you could go to directly to the students or directly to the parents. Say, look, last 5 years, so your kid needs to be in class, so work with us.
Yeah, so we believe it or not, we actually have all of that data in our MTSS student profile.
Yes.
But what the interesting thing though is that there are honor roll students that have high period 1-5 targets. Where you see the difference is once you get up to periods 2, 3, and 4, and I'm just to abbreviate it, think of 2, 3, 4 also like 6, 7, 8. When we have kids that are chronically tardy in those later periods, those are the kids that are failing every class. Period 1, 5, it's mixed. It's everybody. It's girls and boys, good students, struggling students. And so what that tells me is it's just a culture of we don't care about them coming first period. And so I need to, let's just say the number is 300 kids that are tardy every period 1, every day. I need that number to be cut by 2/3 at least. So the kids that can get here are actually incentivized to be here on time. The other kids we can deal with individually, give them the intervention support. And so that's kind of what this policy looks at. It's a framework where we have those paths. One is intensive intervention for the kids that actually have obstacles that would be impactful for them getting here. Let's just say they're like a sibling caretaker and they, and so that impacts their ability to get here on time because they have to be with their little brothers or sisters at the middle school, for example. And then the path for the other kids that we don't have that. We don't have that information. And in the surveys that we've done with the kids, a lot of the kids just said they're lazy. They tell us that they're lazy. It's like, oh, okay, well then you need to get here on time. And so we're going to start with a warning. Number 2, then we're going to start with a warning and an interview. And we'll have a form that they fill out and they explain, justify why they're tardy so we can begin that process of distinguishing whether they need intervention and support or whether they just need to do better. From there, we go to calling home, informing the parents of the consequences. And ultimately, this leads to 10th time, you're getting drop failed and you're not coming to campus until period 2. It has to be taken seriously. And I think until we have something in place that is communicating to our students and families that we just, I don't want it to have to be punitive, but I'm struggling with how to communicate it to our stakeholders that period 1 and 5 are just as important to go to as every other class. There's the other issue of when our kids come in late, they are disrupting instruction in those classes. So it's not just them losing out on their instruction, but now they're interrupting your classes. And it's even worse than that. It's not just that one interruption. So the kid comes in, right? And maybe he comes in, he's 2 minutes late, goes to tardy suite, gets a slip, goes to class, interrupts the class, right? Now another kid comes in 5 minutes later, and there's another knock at the door, and then another kid comes in 10 minutes later. And so we're working out. I think what we want to do right now is funnel all of the kids into like the MPR, and then we'll have release points back to class. So we're mitigating the interruptions that'll take place by the students that are tardy, so teachers aren't having 5 or 6 or 7 interruptions by each student that's coming in. And in doing that, we'll be able to collect some of that intervention. We can do, there are things in here on like strategies for implementation and management. We can have them do some assignments. Obviously, we can get survey information so we can try to understand what their problem is, help them address their problem, and then ultimately, and I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but then we release, and then everybody on campus knows, okay, maybe there are 2 releases during the period. Maybe it's just 1, I'm not sure. Maybe it's we start at 8:30, maybe at 9 o'clock, where all the kids that are tardy, we're releasing any kids that come after that. They're just staying in the NPR for the rest of the period. And that's an absence after 30 minutes. In effect, that's the framework. It's not really about absences. It's really about tardies. We just don't have, you guys have seen the data. It's like 300 tardies, periods 1 and 5, and then like 20, period 2, and period 3, period 4. And so, and when we're doing a good job, we've got everybody out and we're really emphasizing it, it really goes down to like 10. But the persistent problem is period 1. One of my pet peeves last year was, I started communicating that I was frustrated and I wanted our students and families to understand that they needed to get here on time. And I would see kids come in and they would come in with their Starbucks, their Frappuccinos late. And, and some of them had their own cars and were driving to school. And so I'd have like 50 kids that were coming from the student parking lot and they weren't here on time. And so we are going to have rules in place. You come in late, you're not bringing in any food. You have to throw the food out before you come onto campus if you come late. Secondly, you have 4 tardies, you lose campus parking privileges. And so we have parking permits that we've given, but we've never, don't tell anybody, we've never really enforced it. And so that's something I've talked to Tommy about, making sure we have a parking permit process that we're monitoring and can address. But students will lose parking privileges if they can't get here on time. So it's like a couple things like that. We are doing, and Educare has helped us with this, to have more activities before school and earlier to, maybe make it more interesting for kids to come on campus. Like come here at 8, don't come here at 8:20, or come here at 7:30. Get breakfast early, hang out with Educare. They've got games going on and all kinds of stuff. And so we want to make it fun for the kids to come earlier too. We do have, we have our gates open at like 7 o'clock. So families can drop off their kids early. The last thing I'll say about this is once a kid is dropped off on campus, they're not allowed to leave campus. So when I first got to Birmingham, I remember I would do my rounds in the morning. I'd walk around the campus before school started, like the boundary outside, and I would see kids leaving campus. I'm like, where the bleep are you guys? What's going on, you guys? You're on campus. No leaving campus. And so that became a rule that we had to implement, that has been implemented. Once you're here on campus, you're not leaving campus. If you need to leave campus because you have an early leave or whatever, or you're 18, then you're not coming back. But you don't get dropped off by parents, and then parent thinks you're here, and then we let you leave, and you're out in the community somewhere. So that's another piece. Yes.
All right, you have down here, 3 excused in class equals 1 excused absent. So, knowing the kids' frame of minds, that they're like, we don't care. How many unexcused literally impact them? Like, when does it become impactful on unexcused absences?
Well,
And does that would have to be about that? The result has to be where the implement, we're saying, okay, then it's become unexcused absence. What does that mean to it? If that means nothing, telling them 3 unexcused means nothing.
So the short answer is we use this is always a complication for seniors in particular. We'll have an absence policy, right, or a senior contract, and there are a certain amount of absences you can have. Just to be eligible, you have to clear your absences. And so if you have unexcused absences, then you don't get to participate in activities. So one of the pieces is if you have an unexcused absence, then that impacts, you're going to be on a no-go list. If you're a senior, you're not going to be able to participate in senior activities. So that
Are they going to be overridden? Because that's what we had this past year where, they were able to get their unexcused, to get that on the no list. That kind of information where someone will override it, whether it be a counselor or GLA, supervisor. Once that gets out, these kids spread it, don't worry about it, just get them to sign off. And so again, whatever we implement, if it doesn't have any teeth, it doesn't have any teeth. The kids talk to each other, say, don't worry about it, don't like it.
And I get that, but don't forget, there is still due process, and due process is the ability to appeal. And there may be circumstances that we don't know. Additionally, last year, I think we can all agree, last year was different than any other year before, because we're coming out of COVID. And so
But are we saying this year we're going to track through If we're saying those target slips they get out, maybe those target slips, are they putting in excuse in, when they put their card to get the target slip, does it ask them, are you sick, are they, the kids are always, tell a parent, they'll email me, oh, my kid went has a doctor, and I'm like, I'm not the person to go to, it's the office manager, and so, and then they don't follow through because that's it. But you understand, like, it's not being upheld. We're not following procedures, and it's not being upheld by the people that are supposed to. So I'm just saying, carrying this on to this upcoming year, how do we say, I mean, I want to be able to say something to the students, and then, hey, if you don't like this, the consequence, you and your parents have to do this, and then have our side uphold what we just said they have to do. Otherwise, it needs to be something.
Yeah, I agree with you. So, I didn't, the way our, and it's a conversation I'll have with like senior committee and and I should mention, we have a senior contract in place. I asked the GLAs in 9, 10, and 11 to also put in contracts for those grade levels. Because I want kids to begin learning about the contract and accountability in 9th grade. So by the time they get to 12th grade, they're not shocked by, oh, what is this, a contract? I have to follow this and there are consequences. And so I want us to have those systems. And within those systems, in the GLAs, those will be the appeal committees, GLA leads and maybe administrator. And so that'll be a conversation I'll have with those sort of committee heads about holding the kids accountable. Are there going to be times where there are extraordinary circumstances that might lead us to waive something? Sure, but that's not going to be the norm. But there is always that option. I'll just give you like an extreme example. Kid's mom has cancer and kid needs to do something medically to support his parent in the morning, and so kid comes late a lot. And we don't find out about it until the appeal because they're dealing with it. So that's an example of that's something we'd probably waive. But a regular kid that's just late and there's no good reason, there's no case that we're just gonna waive that.
Have you thought about calling you, having an odd call go out every morning when before period one, to be here on time?
Yeah.
No, I mean, the more things you can do to get them on time, the better it is.
Can I say something?
Sure.
My name is Dr. Royster. I'm from Manual Arts High School, and so I'm visiting. I'm friends with Dr. White over there. One of the things we do in the morning is we take attendance by 8:10. If the kid is marked absent, automatic phone call home. Because a lot of times the parents are not aware that their kid is not in school. A lot of kids, especially kids with cars, instead of coming to school, they take a left turn and go to their girlfriend's house. So that phone call does help. And sometimes they show up, well, why did you call? I didn't call, the automated system called.
Okay, just let me remind you, please fill out a speaker's card because that's the protocol we use.
That was my fault, sorry.
I know we make sure he gets a speaker's card. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Dennis.
This may inevitably lead to the charge that we're denying students education by dropping them. So if they are drop-failed, can they go into can they go into that independent study in the morning then?
That's something I have to talk about with Isaac. To me, we're
so once they're drop-failed, they're not on campus at all.
That's right. So
also,
let me just make one other point is there comes a point in time where we have to try something and stick to it and see what works, and then we can get feedback to make adjustments depending upon what's working and what's not working.
This again, I'll acknowledge that Mrs. Ryden knows much more of this because she's been on the administrative side or whatever. But this is very similar to proposals that have happened in the past that I recall at least 3 or 4 times, and the objection has always been, and this is where some undermining happens within the faculty as well. some of the faculty will undermine it as well. Because it's like, oh, okay, you're Friday, you can, no problem, I'll take your work, or, I'll take your work, whenever you decide to turn it in this week, even though it's due on Monday morning, and, so the faculty sometimes don't know where we're standing on that as well. But, to me, there's no excuse for somebody saying, I'm dealing with my mom with cancer, and we don't find out until the 40th week. I mean,
Yeah, that actually does happen.
yeah, no, I know, but I'm just flashing back on the situation I had in periods 1 and 5, because even though the class size was smaller, I had a much more horrendous set of attendance issues. Typically 7 parties out of the class of 28 every single morning. And a few of them, I would go to the counselors or whatever, and it's like, well, they don't care, so there's nothing I can do about it. And it's like, okay, well, great, I've done my job, and I've called home and found out that the parents don't care either. They're enabling the child to be late. So.
Yeah. So, we'll see where this goes. I've looked at a lot of the different policies in different schools. So the Granada policy is the most extreme, and that's if you're like, you can be 30 seconds late and you don't get access to class, right? You get sent to like the study hall room and you're there for the rest of the period, and they give you an absence. And so I'm trying to find a sort of happier medium and see.
Well, you got to back up your faculty
Yeah.
too, because I'm telling you, out of the issues that I've had at the school, it's typically been on parties. Because even before the door shutting and stuff like that, I would shut my door when the bell rings. And then inevitably I get a administrator at my door saying, parents are complaining about your tardy policy. And it's like, no, it's the tardy policy of the school. Why am I taking a hit on this? And it's like, well, just don't slam the door in their face. I'm like, I'm not slamming doors in anybody's face. If the door is shut when the bell rings, because by law, but why are you marking them tardy? I had to explain to the administrator last year that the policy was, as far as I understood it, that if they weren't in the door in their seat, that was considered a tardy, and I was simply following the law in a, something that's admissible to the board or whatever. And I've consistently been astounded by that. And I can.
It's a charge of bell. The bell rang and you're not in class sitting, you're late.
Yeah, but
It's a bell that
I've
you're
had
late, it's a late bell.
I agree.
four administrators in the last 2 years come to me and told me to back off. Yeah.
All right, well, that's a question.
You know how far that went.
Well, we'll have a conversation offline about that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the last item, I worked with Amanda and Christine on this. I don't know what it's gonna look like yet, but what I'd like the board's sort of authorization or approval for us to, we still need to pull more data, but we want to come up with some type of reimbursement system, a refund system for the teachers that have been impacted by Anthem PPO and the poor service, those that have used it and are not getting the service that they need. I don't know what that looks like. The last paragraph here says, be it resolved that the Birmingham Board of Directors approves the BCCHS, CBO, and CEO to make a recommendation to the board about refund reimbursement options for employees that have utilized Anthem PPO services via the Charter Life Trust during the calendar year of 2022. And so we've already pulled some of that data, but we need to pull more data on the usage of the Anthem services. And then at the next board meeting, I think we'll have a recommendation about what we can do to support our teachers and to make it right by our teachers that have paid either for the PPO, that higher level of service, or have had to pay for their co-pays or whatever it is, and they're not able to get timely service by Charter Life in this case.
So you just give these, that it'll come up next week.
Yeah. Well, and I'm asking for sort of the green light to go ahead and do that work and present something.
Some of the agenda is an action item, or am I not reading it right?
No, you're right. You're right.
Unless you want to put it on unless you want to put it on the agenda today as an action item, it'll take 2/3 of the board to put it on the,
No, I think it's fine. I mean, this is informational. We'll come up with something for action next time.
thank you. Bob?
I'm not saying that things may be a step in the right direction, but we have a contract that is in the Charter Life. When is that contract renewable? And is it within the next year?
So, yeah, that's a great question. The short answer is yes. It's basically year to year. We've given them sort of the preliminary notification that we're in the process that we want to exit. And so that starts like a 90-day timeline that gives them the ability to appeal or address our concerns. That was a letter that was drafted by our attorneys to do that. So they've already been notified. I think in an ideal world, I'd say by the end of October, we would have, and really before then, we would have information by our, to give up the board and our bargaining units. Here's another broker, here's a trust, and these are the insurance services that they can provide us with in sort of reinstating the Anthem administration the way it's been. And then if there's the green light, we can go ahead in that direction. So we're not waiting till the end of the year, and that's typically when it would be. We wanted to sort of notify them so we have that process, start that timeline, and can.
So we're looking at other trusts
Yes.
as we speak now.
Yeah.
Looking ahead for the next 3 months, and we could move in that direction.
Yes.
Is it calendar year or
Calendar year.
January, December?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Christine, it's your turn.
Okay,
Do you need a microphone?
I think, can you hear me?
I can. Can they hear you in the back?
Can you hear me in the back?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. Oh, so just wanted to give an update on,
It's funny how that works, okay?
We're all gonna get new microphones, right?
Yeah, it's gotta be at least 4 inches from the.
better,
Closer.
closer?
There you go.
You can lift it off and hold it.
Okay, just wanted to give an update on the governor's budget. As schools are required, legally required to present and adopt their next school year's budget before the governor has signed the state's budget. And with so much of our funding coming from the state, there's always differences between what the governor gives as assumptions in May, which is what is used in our budget adoption, versus all the legislation and the negotiations that happen and the enacted budget. So just wanted to give a couple of highlights of the governor's 2022-23 budget as enacted. Related to the LCFF funding, the governor did maintain his statutory COLA percent of 6.56%, but with the state having excess revenue, he did add an additional 3% augmentation on top of what he had assumed back in May. So that is a favorable change. As well as the hold harmless ADA, looking at schools and the impact of COVID on looking at schools, there was still significant impact in the 2021-22 school year with COVID. And there were a lot of various proposals on how the state could address that. And the one that the governor did enact in his budget was a 1-year hold harmless that applies to charter schools as well, where we can look at our pre-COVID ADA from 2019-20 and apply that to our 2021-22 funding. So that does give us an increase in funding based on that attendance rate. He also did include 2 new one-time grants that Birmingham will be apportioned. The first was a arts, music, and instructional materials block grant. All of the details of those grants usually come in trailer bill language that comes in August or early September. So we don't have the details on how the funds can be spent yet, but preliminary award is around $1.8 million. And once we get the final award amount and the provisions on how we can spend that money and over what time period, we can work on that expenditure plan to implement support. The other significant grant is a one-time learning recovery emergency grant. And that one is estimating about $5.5 million and allowable expenditures through the 27-28 school year. But again, don't have a lot of details on how we're allowed to spend that just yet, but just wanted to put that on the radar that it was not yet in our adopted budget, so we will incorporate those at first interim. And then the other piece relates to expenditures. The Consumer Price Index, which is an indicator of how inflation and the cost of goods and services are, has been skyrocketing, and the governor has increased the CPI to 5.75% for this next year, which is 2% higher than he had estimated back in May. And lots of Department of Finance bulletins and articles lately even talk about inflation being as high as 9%. So we really are still seeing an impact to the supply chain struggles and seeing a slowing economy. So there's cautionary notices about the economy starting to slow down. So we will be keeping an eye on that. And so all of these changes from the governor's signed budget and the start of school will roll in all of these changes at first interim.
Is that money allocated on a pupil basis or an enrollment basis?
They're usually an ADA based on kids' attendance as well as the unduplicated, so our unduplicated students.
Thank you. Any questions?
One question. I realize the 5.75 is established weeks or months ago. Inflation rate has increased. So we anticipate that would be supplemented with the massive state reserve that we have down the road. Could be a few months maybe. See the government increasing that, providing another grant.
It's likely the increased augmentation on the LCFF is to help with that increased inflation.
Any other questions? Dennis?
Just for the record, the last article that I read was like 2 days ago, 9.1% of the country. Okay, California is always higher. San Francisco and LA are always higher than California. So, and I tried to find what LA's rate has been over the past few years, whatever, and they used to do a local rate for many different cities and counties, and apparently that had during the president. So the data ended. But in other words, our 5.75 sounds, delicious. Let's get back to 5.75. Those of us that are sitting in here right now, although gas is about the same as it was in June when I left.
Okay. Thank you. All right, on the consent agenda, items 1 and 2, approval of the credit card for June and the check register for June, and the approval of the June 25th regular board meeting minutes. Are in your Dropbox. Motion to approve by consensus.
For which one? All of them?
Just 1 and 2,
Oh, just for 1 and 2.
and then we'll do the 3 separately. I'm not gonna call roll. Consent, all right? 1 and 2 passed by consensus. Number 3, approval of the 2022-23 committee on assignment approval to teach physical education. Mr. Bennett,
Yeah, that's the teachers that are coaches, in order to give the kids PE credit. This is something that we do every year for the committee on assignment. So
Number 3 on consent.
Right, but on assignment approval, okay, I'm sorry, this is just for Matt Mallory's,
Yeah.
ability to teach P. Okay, so I guess I went to the coach one.
It's okay? All right, moved second by consensus, seeing no objection, carries, thank you.
Forgive me, who's second?
Yeah.
Who's second? Motion?
Mr. Alexander. All right, action items, number 1 is not problem. Item number 2, approval of period 5 tardy attendance policy. The motion to approve item number 2. Dr. White moves. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed?
And this is 2, what happened to 1?
I think 1 would keep, well, we'll go back to 1 in a minute. All right, number 1 was really to keep the calendar as it is, except on November 12th through to November 19th, and May 27th through to May 20th.
So
Moved and seconded? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Number 3, approval of intent to hire a PSW on the basis of a variable term waiver.
Yeah, so let me just explain that very quickly. We actually did this last year also. There's a lack of qualified applicants. And so we need a variable term waiver to hire somebody and then allow her or him to begin the process to get the credential in effect. So we need the board's approval. Once we get the board's approval, we send it to the CTC so they can get that variable term waiver certification so they can begin providing services to students.
Dennis?
Do we still have to send out a report to our parents about compliance on credentials and stuff?
Yeah.
To send out, okay, so on both the previous one and this, does this trigger that report that we are out of compliance?
No, this puts us in compliance.
Oh, okay, by the
Okay, is there a motion to approve item number 3?
So moved.
Moved and seconded by Bob Alexander. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Number 4, approval of the 2022-23 local assignment options.
So,
1 period coach authorization for PE coaches.
yeah, so that's Jose Alcala, Dario Avila, Benjamin Bray, Nick Howlett, Kevin Kelly, Chris Garcia, Devin Saxon, Matthew Mowry, so they can get that, have that 1 period, even though they're not PE credentialed, their kids can get the PE credit for that 1 period that they're coaching.
So moved.
Moved and seconded by Dr. White. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Number 5, approval of certificated B and C basis calendar due to clerical error, adjustment to instructional calendar.
Yeah, so originally there was Amanda shared with me, she wanted to be here, by the way, but she had a childcare issue, so she gave me some notes to speak to. There was a clerical error in that the B and C basis calendar went through the 20th, and it shouldn't have. It should have stopped after the 9th.
Of what?
And so June 12th to June 30th is off basis. And in the previous calendar, it was on basis, and that was a mistake.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve? Moved, seconded by Bob. All right, all those in favor of changing, adjusting the calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Number 6, authorization to approve Artie Bennett as an additional signatory for Pacific Western Bank. I don't know.
It's up to you guys.
That's for the house. Carrying. All right. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? All right. That's it. All right. All right. Approval, number 7, approval of authorization for newly appointed CBO. Christine Torres to be a signatory for the following Birmingham accounts: Laco, Pacific Western Bank, California Credit Union, and John Hancock. Oh. I hope you have a lot of pens. All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Good. Have fun. Number 8, approval of the credit card. Okay, here we go. For Christine Torres, Tadio Marco, and Tommy Elmore as administrative directors. Does mileage come to this one? The move is seconded. All right, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Thank you, Mark. All right, number 9.
Number 9, we're pulling.
We're pulling.
We're pulling because we don't need that. We thought we needed it, but we don't need it.
All right, number 10, board resolution for Pacific Western Bank business line of credit, the amount of $3 million. Remove Will Covington, Chief Business Officer, as a person authorized, and replace it with Christine Torres as Chief Business Officer. Okay, motion moved, seconded. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Thank you. Seeing none other further business, motion to adjourn. So moved. Thank you all. Good opening.
Thank you.
People have to sign some documents.